Hi, and welcome to the Black Sustainability Summit. I'm Nataki Kambon from the Let's Buy Black 365 Black Economic Empowerment Movement. Today, we're going to talk about how to practically and sustainably finance the liberation. We're going to break it down into three parts. First is a very quick synopsis of just the problem statement, but like the whole concept of this conference, we don't want to dwell on the problems, we really want to get to solutions. So after the problem statement, we're going to move into practical solutions and practical action steps that you can take to be a part of the mechanism that is capable of financing the revolution. All right, so let's get started. First, let's talk about the problem. So we all recognize that we need more sustainable solutions to problems that face the Black diaspora, and the challenge is generally resources. Where do the resources come from? How do we do it? What we tend to see is that many who have a lot of resources don't have the mindset to really move any kind of liberation forward. On the other hand, we see that some who have the mindset don't have the resources to do anything on a large enough scale to impact people throughout the diaspora in a really meaningful way. So how do we bridge that gap? Now, there are people like Julius Malema and the sister from the African Union who are talking about making real changes for people in the diaspora and throughout the diaspora, but we need bigger solutions. Another challenge is that if many of us talking about sustainability only look at it in the context of how do we move towards siloing ourselves and move away from bigger societies to just be able to be self-sufficient, then how do we actually create a collective empowerment? So this presentation is about how to actually shift towards moving some of those resources from those who may not have the same liberation mindset to those of us who do. All right, so a little bit about me and my background before we dive into the solutions. I have been the spokesperson, founder, and activist with the Let's Buy Black 365 movement for 4 years now, and many of you know me in that capacity or through the Connect TV show. What many of you don't know is that my background is in management consulting. So my daily life for the last 18 years has been to help individuals take a small business idea and scale it into a 6, 7, 8-figure operation that it moves from beyond solo entrepreneurship or mom and pop to actual enterprise level. So how is that relevant when we're talking about sustainability and Black liberation? The reality is that our people are in desperate need of having just basic quality of life needs serviced. And the way that that can happen, and because that is not the reality for many of us, you hear people say things like, I'm just worried about where the next paycheck is coming from. I'm not thinking about those people over there because I'm just trying to get mine. And you have this individualistic mentality that is all focused on money and fulfilling basic needs, food, clothing, housing, all of these kinds of things. So if we are trying to achieve a ultimate goal of liberation and we need a mental buy-in from people who have the same interest, how do we do that? The practical way to do that, and the way the rest of the world does it, is through business enterprises. So we have a misconception in our community that I want to address before we talk about the solutions. One of the misconceptions is when we look at large scale enterprises and some of the models that we see on a daily basis, we tend to think of companies that are constantly raping the earth, who are exploiting people, who are exploiting resources, who are doing all of these negative things. The conclusion that we mistakenly draw is the only way to succeed in business is to do these unscrupulous things, so I don't want to have anything to do with business. But just because the models that you're aware of are doing things that aren't in line with your spirit or your morals or your energy doesn't mean that that is the only way to succeed in business. I'm going to share some resources of businesses that are doing social good and have the focus and the mission to not exploit people at the core. And I really want you to take a pause and really reflect on that concept of, if the only examples I have seen don't work, does it mean that the whole concept doesn't work? And the reason that's a question that we want to ask is because it is definitely important for us to learn tools for being completely independent without the help of anyone else. But if we're really talking about liberation and nation building, that involves the coming together of ideologies, coming together of individuals, coming together of resources, coming together to do long-term intergenerational planning. And that can't happen if everyone is siloed. So how do we create something different? Let's talk about the solutions. When we're talking about the solutions, we're talking about enterprises. And those enterprises can be service-based, they can be product-based, they can utilize natural resources without stripping the earth and doing some of the things that are not in line with many of our philosophies. I will share just a little bit about myself. I grew up from the time I was in 3rd grade forward. I have been very environmentally conscious, very conscious of people, animals, resources, and everything I've done personally and professionally is always in line with those things. And so we're talking about, how do we do that to really create resources for the Black community? And here's the solutions that I'm talking about. So what happens when someone creates a sustainable enterprise business? Well, one of the first things that happens is to scale that sustainable enterprise to be able to service a multitude of customers, you need to employ people who look like you. So once you employ people who look like you, that helps make a shift so that those persons have a better quality of life, and it gives them more free time. It takes people out of needing to work 2 and 3 jobs just to get by, needing to do side hustles just to get by, needing to do maybe illegal things just to get by. And it puts you as a Black entrepreneur, not self-employed and not a side hustler, but you as a Black entrepreneur in the capacity to actually be able to measurably improve the lives of people in your community. Next, the ripple effects from that. When the quality of life changes, communities beautify. When quality of life changes, we talk about domestic violence goes down, and male-female relationships improve. Marriage stats go up, divorce rates go down, property ownership increases. All of these things happen. Nation building happens because people have more children. Quality of schools improves. Resources improve. And the other thing that happens is people who now are not struggling day to day just to figure out where their next paycheck is coming from, now look at, what can I do with this free time? And one of the things they do is, let me give back to others. Let me do something to make my community better. And this is how we create nation building. So what we're talking about in terms of financing the revolution is a mindset where we're shifting from siloing ourselves to just being independent, to actually shifting to how can I be a resource for my community through entrepreneurship on a grander scale. So with that, let's talk about what happens in other communities and what can and will be happening in our communities through what we're going to close out here with today. So what happens in other communities is, and you know, we're talking about Asian communities, people in the so-called Middle East, we're talking about Latino communities, we're talking about virtually everyone on the planet except us, till now. What happens is people build a business enterprise with the sole intention of employing people who look like them. Now, we recognize that a lot of our people get it wrong, especially in the United States, and think, okay, I am looking for other people to give us jobs, and they're not giving jobs, and then they're not treating us well on these jobs. But it's all based on a flawed concept that the company was created to give out jobs freely to any and everyone who just needed employment. The reality is that people are looking to employ people who look like them, to fortify the skills of people who look like them, so that they can take the revenue generated and reinforce their community. So how do we now take that model, which has been our model throughout African history, but we've somehow lost sight of, and really do something with it so that we can have a measured, sustained and sustainable impact on our community? So one of the things that I recommend is that we do first a self-reflection. The reality is not everyone should be an entrepreneur. I will be the first one to say that. There are a number of qualities that go into entrepreneurship and just a mindset that goes into entrepreneurship, and just like anything on the planet, not everything is for everybody. But if you are doing the self-reflection about you and your personality and your capabilities, you can ask yourself a couple of questions. Do I have leadership qualities and capabilities? And that doesn't mean bossing people around. In fact, the best leaders don't boss people around at all. The best leaders inspire leadership in others. But do I have those kinds of qualities? Do I succeed at follow through? Do I start something and stick with it through to the end? Do I have the ability to buy into a long-term vision that I create for myself, that I can carry forward? These are some of the kinds of things that we're talking about. And if you do have that, and you have been thinking about sustainability in the past only about, you know, doing for yourself, for your family on an individual level, we're going to talk about how we can translate that into a way that you can do it for your family, but also for other families through enterprise solutions that employ others. Okay, if the answer to that is, you know what, I know I can do a realistic self-assessment, and I know that some of those skills that make people great entrepreneurs are not my skills, then what else can I do? And it's a little counterintuitive and usually the opposite of what we hear. I think it's a big disservice that so many people say that everyone should start a business. So we need to address another problematic concept that circulates in our community. And some who are peddling a get rich quick concept, or all these concepts, hammer out all the time that everyone should be an entrepreneur. Again, I think that's a disservice, because it doesn't take into account what we just talked about, that's not a skill set that everyone has. But it also is not realistic when we look at how other communities and how we as a people used to be able to sustain our communities. And that is through enterprise operations that are somehow able to thrive and function because they have skilled, talented, committed, loyal employees. And so part of the self-reflection can be, how important is it to me that my name be on the door in order for me to feel like I can make a difference, or in order for me to feel like this is something that I can really give myself to. How important is that name on the door? We do know a lot of times people think about starting a business and they want to get the title of CEO or, get that business card out there and say that I own it. But is it possible for us to be as invested as we are for some jobs that are not owned and controlled by us, as we are in companies that are owned and controlled by us? And so the second self-reflection that I'm going to ask you to take is, reflect on, the hardest you've worked at any job in your life, and what did the owner of that company look like? If when you were working for someone else, and what would it look like if you worked that hard for a business that was owned by someone who was African-centered, who was taking the profits from that company and using it to employ more people who look like you, to improve your community, and to continue to finance other activities that advance the liberation? That's a very different concept when we look at employment. Because many of us look at it as working for other people who don't put anything back in community, we dismiss it as an option, but we really do need to think about, is our goal only to, again, be independent, be siloed, or is our goal to be able to make an impact through our community activities, but also through our skilled labor, through our educational background? So many people have amazing advanced degrees and all of these things and are willing to go utilize them in other communities, and don't think about the fact that, if I were to take my talents and actually use it in a small business, how exponentially could they actually grow, and how much could I grow within this organization in a way that actually, helps move it, advance the needle. So that's the second self-reflection. We want to think about business and think about entrepreneurship differently. The final concept I want us to do a self-reflection on is around goals and fulfillment. So one of the things that I hear so often when people look at businesses and small businesses, especially in the Black community, is, so many are struggling. In fact, there's a statistic that says that 98% of Black-owned businesses, 97 to 98% of Black-owned businesses are solo entrepreneurships that will never employ anyone other than the owner. And that most of those entrepreneurship endeavors earn less than $18,000 a year, which is less than the poverty line for an individual. So if you extrapolate that in a business, it's not a lot of money. And so these are not necessarily the kind of entities or enterprises that we're talking about needing and creating more of in order to advance the movement. So what are we talking about, and what can we reflect on? One of the things that we can recognize with some of these small businesses in terms of how they do business and get started versus how many of my clients get started, there's a vast difference in terms of personal investment and also in terms of skill set. So what many of these enterprises or small businesses start out doing is saying, I'm good at something, or I want to start a business. Let me just start and let me figure things out as I go, and hopefully if I work really hard, if I try really hard, if I just, really focus, then I know I will be successful. Things will just come into place. I'll finally get all those customers I need and want. And you end up with 97 to 98% of Black-owned businesses in the United States being solo entrepreneurships. What my clients do and what other people do is they either individually or with a group gather resources and then hire business management consultant experts to come in and surround them with every single tool they need to get fully functional, profitable, operational, and off the ground, usually in a couple of months. So there is a misconception out there that we definitely want to address, and we hear it said and repeated all the time, and unfortunately people get the context wrong. And that misconception is it takes 5 years in business for you to really get to a point where you know whether you're going to fail or succeed and to really turn a profit. And that is actually wrong. What should be happening is maybe in terms of your initial investment in the company, it may take you 5 years to actually recoup that initial investment. But what you should be seeing on the books every month when you're doing your accounting is that your income exceeds your expenses and that you have profit and revenue on the books. What generally happens is, people struggle for 5 years or however much time it is, and the money to keep the business going is coming from some outside source. Maybe you're still working another job or something, and month to month the business is not profitable or barely profitable or just breaking even, which is really not profitable. This is not what will allow us to create the kind of enterprises we just talked about that can have political influence, cultural influence, community influence, and impact our communities on a greater scale. So we want to get rid of the concept that 5 years to profitability or 5 years of struggling are the kind of businesses that we need. We actually need to eradicate that mindset. We need to eradicate those businesses, and we need to adopt the implementation methods that most other communities use on a regular basis. That kind of shifts me into what I do on a daily basis, which is to help companies. We have an accounting team, we have an HR team, we have a web development and marketing team, we have a business development team, and all of those individuals work together when an individual is going to start a company or when a client is going to start a company, and we leverage our collective knowledge and come up with a resource plan and launch a business so that it is profitable, functional, operational, again, usually in 3 to 6 months, depending on the kind of company it is. Now, this is what other people are doing outside of our community. I've shared before in other platforms that unfortunately, in the 18 years that I've been in business, it is not people who look like me who tend to come to us for services. But the reason you're here today is because we are hoping to change that on a massive scale. And for all the reasons that we just talked about. So with that, we really want to look at, in that self-reflection, how important is it that I be able to say that this business launched through my sweat equity? And if my goal is really to help my people, to help my community, to help advance the movement, then is it more important that I struggle for years and years just to be able to stamp it and say that I did it myself? Or is it better to employ the mechanisms that others employ, where they launch, they turn a profit, and usually within a year or two, they're opening up their second location, they're expanding, they're hiring more people, the owners and leadership are now able to get involved in local government and influence local government in a way that changes the political environment in their favor. All of these different kinds of things. And so we really want to start thinking about community influence and business much differently. So how do we do that? Let's talk about the practical solutions and the practical steps. All right, so the practical solutions and practical steps. First, we've actually done 2 of those here just in terms of self-reflection. The next is we really want to do a deep dive into what kinds of enterprises make the most sense and are needed in such a way that the demand is already there. That's not to say that, you know, it will only be based on demand that customers will flow through. We still need good marketing and all these tools, but we do want to start with a concept that can be where a demand can be created or a demand already exists. Then we want to look at what resources do we have, either as an individual or a group of individuals or a collective coming together, that we can put together something and sustainably work together to grow this entity. Then we want to look at what kind of impact on community do we have, or do we want to have, and that can help give us some guidance. And then next we want to look at what resources do I have now, and how can I use those, especially financial resources or capital or skills or whatever it is, how can I leverage that so that it is an investment? And that's the next and final concept that I want to introduce here. Another misconception that is held within business is that I'm going to start this business, I'm going to invest everything in it, buying products and supplies and, you know, maybe some business cards or anything, and then I'm going to sit and wait for the customers to show up. You know, I'm just waiting for the customers. That's actually the wrong way to do it. Normally when we advise businesses, we may get someone who says, I've got $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 to start a business. Our recommendation is, one, you never max out your full cash on the business startup. You first want to have a reserve for emergencies or anything that is set aside that's not ever intended to be an investment in the business. Next, you need to allocate funds for marketing and advertising to get clients, customers, and keep that mechanism going. I am in the process of writing a book, and one of the chapters of the book is entitled Word of Mouth is Not a Marketing Plan. And so that's one of the critical components that actually devastates many, especially Black-owned businesses, in that they don't advertise and hope that the customers will come, or just wait for the customers to come. Because the idea is, well, if I make a really great product and service, people will just flow through. But there are a lot of great products that no one ever hears about. And then there are also plenty of really, you know, think about all the crappy products that just have really great advertising and people buy them all the time. So we want to think about all of these concepts differently. And what this workshop is about today is for those who are looking at long-term, intergenerational, sustainable plans for yourself, your family, and your community. I am doing individual consultations with people about what kind of business enterprise you can start or buy into or be a part of, especially if you, again, have the mindset that you don't necessarily have to be the one who created it to be a part of the success, and go from there. I think it's critically important that we get more like-minded people engaged in enterprises that have the revenue to be able to do massive influence. Right now, we're hoping for global ideological shifts without the financial resources, without the leverage, and without the tools that really can help make that happen faster. So with that, here's what we're offering to the participants of the Black Sustainability Summit. If you are an individual who has the financial investment and the vision for a company and are interested in putting yourself in an enterprise level entrepreneurship endeavor, then we are going to help you with the marketing, management, accounting, and startup resources to grow that enterprise to the enterprise level. You can sign up for a consultation with me. My contact information is below. You can reach me either directly through the self-scheduler link. You can also reach me on the Black Social Education Network, abibitumi.com. But you can reach me through abibitumi, or you can reach me through the self-scheduler link, and you can do a premium consultation that's normally $150. You can actually, if you put Black Sustainability Summit in the message, you can do it for free. And we will look at how to get you started. The goal for those who take advantage of this is when the Black Sustainability Summit comes around next year, we want to be able to showcase sustainable Black enterprises that have created jobs, that have catapulted the owner, you, into a position where you can have influence in your local area, and where you are self-sufficient in a way that brings community together. So if you are interested in this, you can again contact through any of the means possible. You can also call the office number. You can't text it because it is an office number. You can call 301-244-9072. That's here below as well. And we are going to actually put into action what we're saying when we're talking about sustainability, and we're going to have quantifiable examples for the summit next year. So thanks for watching. Q&A will follow this, and I'll be able to answer more questions, and we'll talk soon. With that, definitely want to thank Afia and the entire team from the Black Sustainability Summit for coordinating this international effort, and I look forward to meeting you all in the Q&A session. You can reach me through any of those other portals, and many of you know my biological brother, Dr. Obadale Nataki Kambon from abibitumi, and I will close this presentation with the phrase that he coined, which translates to Black liberation, and that is Abibi Fahodie. Abibi Fahodie.
What if there was a unique travel experience for you to discover your true African greatness?
The Sankofa journey is calling you. Experience royalty, traditional African dance. Hear the sounds of the bells and the drums. It's the shopping. Get the fashions. Meet your African family. This is your legacy. Remember the past. Discover your inner warrior. Taste the food. is the artisanship. Travel the cities, the villages, and the mountains. Discover your culture, language, spirit, family, power, ancestry, birthright on the Sankofa journey to Ghana, West Africa.
Only on the Sankofa journey.
Come home. Register now. www.sankofajourney.com.
You've been craving a change in Black media, and Let's Buy Black's Positive Black Media Project is bringing it to you every Monday night. Get your fix with the all-new breakout show that features the best in Black music, culture, education, business, fitness, technology, entertainment, and lifestyle. Get ready to meet your new favorite host, along with brilliant entrepreneurs, powerful activists, chefs. Watch a segment featuring your favorite positive Black media producers, youth initiatives, community organizations, elders, business leaders, world leaders, hot entertainers, and more. Tune in Mondays at 8 p.m. to connect.
Let's Buy Black 360.
Yeah, Let's Buy Black 360.
Let's Buy Black 365.
It's everything. We're blacking it out.
Get plugged in and tune in to letsbuyblack365.com/connecttv.